Yeah, so.
Yeah, that looks good, Lewis.
Right.
Hey, Lewis, do you want to click up?
Yeah, I'll just add in a link to the chat. Okay, sure, I'll kick off then. Just a quick.
Lewis, you've gone on mute again.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just a few technical issues still. I'm going to do it now. Right, can you see the presentation?
Yes, that's very good.
Brilliant. Okay, so we'll get a start now. If anybody joining now, please make sure that you turn your microphones off. We are recording this session. If possible, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat. We will answer all queries at the end of the presentation. And yeah, thank you very much. So I'll kick off. So basically, we're introducing today the renal active patient learning tool, which is to help practices to manage CKD. So that'll be, I'll be doing a couple of summary slides, and Dr. John Robson will be the main presenter. So I'll try. Right. So what are we going to cover? First of all, we'll just tell you who CEG is. Then we'll be introducing the APL tool, and then we're going to go through a checklist of what to do next. And then there'll be a slide on who to contact, facilitators, etc. And last of all, we allow some space for questions. Now, who are the clinical effectiveness group? We're a group of GPs, analysts, data scientists, facilitators. We're all based at Queen Mary University. We work across the whole of Northeast London. Because of our data sharing agreements with all your practices, we have access to primary care data across Northeast London. And this we use to build dashboards, searches, and software tools like the one today for GP teams, commissioners, and public health. We also have a team of facilitators and support officers that can support practices directly. Every single practice, we like to do at least one visit for each practice. That will be focused on performance and quality. We also, our research team, publish research of national and international significance, and we're funded by the NHS and local authorities in North East London and research grants. So what does the APL-Renal tool do? It's create list of patients, flags critical falls in EGFR. It filters your lists so that you can take actions on follow-ups and referrals for overdue measures and serious deteriorations, and also to help to improve CKD coding. It also allows you to have a patient review page that allows you as a clinician to tailor-make your approach to that patient's care. And it allows you to see EGFR trends over time, urine ACR, blood pressures, and key medications. And last of all, the team also does create lists for you so that you can export that list of patients so that you can use those for booking appointments and or sending messages to your patients, or to inform the key information for when you're doing referrals. And in aid of this, we've created, we have several supporting elements, which obviously, as I said, includes facilitation. But we have a web page, dedicated web page for the renal APL tool. We have a nice little video that will guide you through the whole process of setting it all up, but John will go through that today. And then we have two guides, one for EMIS and one for System 1. And that's it from me. So, John, over to you, John. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you, Lewis. I'm going to start trying to share, I hope. Let's see if I've got this right. Lewis, you're going to have to let people in still. They're coming in. So
yeah, but I'll do that.
I'll do this. So can you see my screen all right, Lewis?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so I can't see anybody now, so you'll have to manage anything on the chat and let people in. So, hi everybody, I'm John Robson. I'm one of the clinical leads at CEG, and Lewis actually is one of our facilitators in City and Hackney. And this tool, I think it's important to stress that yes, it's a piece of digital IT kit, but that really it depends on a number of system things to make it really effective in the ICB and your localities. It requires clinical engagement. It requires clinical champions to say, CKD is really important. This is what we think we should be doing. It would be really helpful if the ICS could think about incentivizing some of these measures so that practices get paid for doing extra work. And I think it does need to include at some point in-practice pharmacists who in many ways can manage some of this extra workload. So I think we're very conscious that primary care is on its knees at the moment, and getting people to try and do more is extremely difficult within the current context. And any support that the ICS can give, the federations can give, the PCNs can give, will be most welcome. It's a system, it's not a plugin, but it is an important part of the program. So what this tool is, it's a set of EMIS and System 1 searches that we will provide to the practices. They run the search and then import it into the tool, which is an Excel macro. That Excel macro has to be enabled. So there's a little bit of Microsoft made it a little bit difficult to use Excel now, and it just needs to be enabled as a text document. But we can help you with that and that implementation, and that's where our facilitators will come in handy. So we'll just go down. Right. So our supporting elements are key to this. So first of all, it's having up-to-date data entry templates to ensure the tool has high-quality coded data to draw from. And we recently updated our templates and are making some more updates to them as we speak. And it includes the facilitator support that will provide you with either telephone support or in-practice support and guidance, as well as the web pages that Lewis said that has a guide as to how to implement this. What the tool does, I think it's important to say, is that it's a highly sensitive tool. It's meant to pick up a lot of renal disease that you might not be aware of, because it has two big functions. It's to pick up renal disease that you may not be aware of, and then for the renal disease you are aware of, it's to help you get your targets. So it picks up anybody who has ever had an EGFR of less than 60 recorded, or has an increased protein ACR in their urine. As such, some of these people, this has been put on perhaps erroneously or just as a one-off, and they don't have renal disease. So it's important to understand that you will find some of these people, and the tool will enable you to quickly identify and screen those people, and if necessary, rule them out. Because what you're really interested in is people who really do have CKD, and if they do, are they on the right treatments? So it helps you find any CKD that's uncoded. So people who've got a high EGFR, but a low GFR, but don't have CKD. It finds people with CKD who have uncontrolled hypertension or are missing ACRs, or who are not on the right treatments. So it'll help you do all those things. Secondly, something it's got a virtual review page. So for any patient listed, in the filter that you've chosen. You click on that person and it will open up a virtual review page that summarizes all the key information for that patient. And it's a very useful summary for, you know, for the GP, for the nurse, for the in-practice pharmacist, whoever's looking at that. They can quickly say, do I need to look at the notes of this person to find out any further information? It's a very quick way of doing it. And then lastly, the tool will export patient lists for Actrix recall. It will export a list of patients, NHS numbers that could be re-imported to EMIS if required, or it will export you that virtual review page for any individual that you've got attached to a referral. And I'll go through all these things one by one. So this is a picture of the front page of the tool. And at the top, it says the people who are selected for this tool are people, anybody who ever had an EGFR of less than 60 when they've been adults, or a urine ACR of 3 or more. And so, as I say, it'll pick up some people who don't in fact have CKD. They just happen to have these things for whatever reason added once, you know, in their record, and that happens not infrequently. So you will find that those people can be screened out. Then you've got these series of filters in that middle pane, so you can look at people who've had a fall in their EGFR from their highest value within 2 years of more than 10 or more than 15, or people who've had no repeat EGFR done after that initial one that was taken. So that's a way of finding, you know, people who may have not had repeating EGFRs done. It shows you people, you can filter instead on people whose latest EGFR is less than 30 or less than 45 rather than less than 60, or they've got no EGFR in 12 months. You can look at people who do and don't have a urine ACR, if it's high or low. You can look at their blood pressure. You can look at whether they're on a particular medication, on SGLT2s, on ACE, on statins, on CK, whether they've got their CKD coded, whether they've got comorbidities, and whether they've been referred or reviewed. You can use combinations of these factors. You know, it's quite a powerful tool. And what I'm showing here is this is a de-identified list of patients. These are not that the dates of birth have been changed, so you can't identify anybody. There's no identifiable data in here, but they are dummy patients. But they do have real values. So in this particular practice, that tool pulled out 800 people. It was a practice of 10,000. Pulled out 800 people who had an EGFR of less than 60 or an ACR of less than 3 milligrams. And I have selected on here. You can see it says no EGFR, show me all the people who've got no EGFR in the last 12 months recorded, and it found 134 of them. So it's a lot of people still to go through. So, you know, you can choose, you know, how you want to select people. As I say, this is selecting that 134 people. Now, I've set a different set of filters. This time I've said, show me all the people who do have CKD 3 to 5 recorded, and we've got a blood pressure of 160 or 100 or more, and there are 22 patients in this practice. So it's quite a number, but you know, a more doable number. It's not in the hundreds, so you can say, well, this is perhaps a priority group that I want to look at. And down below, I've had to truncate it because you can't see it on the screen. It's showing you patient 15, but there are 22 other patients down there. And for each patient on that screen, it summarizes their age, their gender, their EMIS number, their latest EGFR, and in this case, they've got a latest EGFR of 44, and the previous EGFR within 2 years was 69. So that person has got a fall in EGFR of 25. He hasn't had urine ACR recorded. He does have his CKD recorded. He does have CVD. He's got diabetes. He's got hypertension. Doesn't have heart failure or AF. His blood pressure is 162 over 76. He's not on SGLT2s, but he is on a statin and ACE ARB. So, so there we are. There's all those, some of those 22 patients listed now, showing you the full screen. And that I'm going to look at patient number 15, who's got this quite big fall in EGFR, bit worrying, elderly person. And here is, if I click on that person, here is the patient review screen, and you can see it gives you a very nice picture of the decline in this person's EGFR. over, those last 2 years, and because he's had quite a number of measures done. It displays the fact that he's got CKD coded, no ACR, his blood pressure again. It shows you his Q risk. And I'm going to just show you the next, and just over on the right-hand side here is a little aid memoir, because what the renal consultants are asking us to do now is to code people not only with their EGFR 1 to 5, but also with their ACR category 1 to 3. And that's something that we're just at the moment adding to our templates to make it a bit easier, as it's, quite not quite complicated. So each of these CKD things has, you can have CKD grade 4 A1 or CKD grade 4 A2, and each of these have got different codes. So it's a bit complicated, but anyway, we'll try and make it a little bit easier. So the next page is going to show you the rest of this patient screen. So the Q risk there, they've got chronic heart disease, essential hypertension, type 2 diabetes. It doesn't show you all their medications. So that person is on ramipril, and you don't know until you look at their notes whether or not they're on any other anti-hypertensive medication. They certainly should be, and you need to check that out. They're not on SGLT2. They are on statins, but they haven't got a recent referral listed that they have been reviewed, but not recently. So, that person probably needs some looking at. There's another. I see. Yeah. So another example is this is another patient in that list, and this is a woman of 65. She'd only had 2 EGFRs done recently, so it's a bit of a more of a straight line. She's got a blood pressure 145 or 106. She's got high Q risk score, and she's not on a statin, and she should be. She would certainly be over 10%. And again, it's worth looking at her blood pressure control, and other elements. She has been referred to a nephrologist, so there's going to be some correspondence. But it's giving you a quick summary of that person, so that here's somebody of interest that you're going to need to look up and find out more information. You can see there's a little panel there that says, up at the top right-hand side, it says patient export info. You can export this entire sheet as a PDF, and as I say, you could attach that to a referral if you wanted for to immune specialists. So this is the filter kind of page that I've been displaying, and I'm just going to go a little bit more, because on the top of the tab here you can see export to Accurix. So you can export any filtered list of patients to Accurix, and then say, well, whatever the list is, say you've got high blood pressure, you're not been reviewed, could you come in and see us? You can export the patient list, or you can export the patient number. As I say, on that patient review page, you can export that the PDF showing the whole thing. So it's quite flexible in that sense. It will do either ENIS or System 1, and those are the export features. And then lastly, over on the right-hand side, it will show you it will show you a summary of the entire cohort in your practice. So it's showing this practice had a total of 800 people, and of whom 37% of them are coded. So quite a lot of not coding. More than half of them got hypertension. About a fifth have got CBD. Half have got diabetes. A minority on SGLT2s, and so on. So we can, over time, perhaps modify that once it becomes clear what the ICB target incentives are, to show you where at any time your practice is in terms of meeting some target. But at the moment, the ICB is still sorting out what it wants to do with its target next year, whether it's just rolling some of the old ones over. But in the future, it may be giving some new ones. So so this is the again a picture of those filters. The ones I was showing earlier are just a slightly earlier version than this latest one. We now allow you to select whether you've got CVD, yes, or whether you don't have CVD. So we made the filters a little bit more easy to use and flexible. So it's quite a complicated tool. I think that once you become familiar with it, you'll be able to use it. But it's just to make it clear once again that it's to do two things. It's to find people who don't at the moment have. Oh, can somebody go on mute for me? Thanks. So it shows you people who don't at the moment have a coded CKD, and in fact who may not have it. So it's quite sensitive. But it also shows you of people who've got CKD, whether or not they're meeting targets. So two main functions. And as I say, the coding of CKD is changing, getting slightly more complicated, and we hope to update our templates very shortly to make that a bit easier. So what to do next? If you haven't already requested it, you can do that. Do we have the link in the chat, Lewis?
Yeah, the download, I put it on the chat already.
You've got the demo video and the user guide on the web. Do use our long-term conditions template, the CKD page for coding. And as I say, we're in the process of further updating that as the London Kidney Network have been giving more guidance that we need to catch up with. And then do get in touch if you need help in loading or using. I would just make one little point, which is that in BHR, it seems there are some practices on slightly older versions of ENIS that didn't import our searches properly. So we had to create a new set of searches that we have available. So if you do find that you're in BHR and you have a problem with an import, do get in touch and we'll send you a slightly different set of searches. And I don't think it applies to a lot of practices. I think it may be just probably 2 of them at half a dozen, if that. I think that's it really. Lewis, do you want to kind of just say about the contacts?
Yeah, so this is just a map showing all the different facilitators that we have. So City and Hackney, that's me, Lewis and Chessia, Walton Forest, Faye, Parkingham, Havering and Richbridge. We have Tracy, Billy, Joe and Ranjan, so Hamlet, Toyin and Faye and Liam, Britt. So do contact us if you have any difficulties with this tool, either downloading or using it, or if you find any oddities that you need explained, and then we'll either answer those directly via email or arrange MS Teams, or we can even do face-to-face follow-up training with your clinicians as well. So yeah, we have several ways to support you.
Lewis, I haven't kept up with the chat at all, so
yeah,
could you
just so there are a few questions. First question is to do with so I'm just going to read the main bits. So in terms of identification of the encoded CKD, there are loads of patients with sparse info and parameters, probably higher in the encoded. How far does this look back chronologically? Does it have a proxy values that approximate when the data set is incomplete?
Okay.
So
that's a really good point. And I think that was the point, Shahed, that I was making about the tool, that it is very sensitive. So it picks up anybody who has had a low EGFR or a raised urine ACR. So in that respect, it's going to pick up some people who have very, very little information because, for whatever reason, this record was made, not in error, but in some particular circumstance, which doesn't mean the person has CKD. The problem is that if we try and truncate that and say, well, we're only going to include very recent values, you're going to lose some people who do in fact have CKD. So we are stuck with a bit of a conundrum. I think the thing is to see how this is. You can filter those people out basically because they won't have any repeat EGFRs, and it is quite easy to kind of get rid of them if it seems over time that this really is a hindrance, then we can look at, say truncating to only people within the last 5 years, for example, or whatever. But I'm a bit reluctant to do that, and I think with the renal consultants felt, include everybody at the moment, filter out, people, but perhaps review that as time goes on. Does that answer your question a little bit?
I'm going to interject. Sorry. Yes, it does. I'd rather it was oversensitive than undersensitive.
Okay, well that's helpful then. So it is oversensitive, if you like, in that respect. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you.
So there are 2 questions on ethnicity. So basically, is ethnicity still a thing in CKD? If so, is it a parameter factored into the APL-Renal tool? And the second.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just mention both of them in one go. So, and are there any additional parameters for patients of different ethnic backgrounds, as there is miscoding for EGFR based on ethnicity?
Right. So the tool doesn't filter at the present time on ethnicity, but ethnicity is recorded in the patient information page. And if I just quickly kind of try and share my screen once again, let me show you where that is. If you can see on this screen here, this person, it says under full name, date of birth, it's not a real date of birth, hashtag, ethnicity, this person is Caribbean. So you do have some indication of people's ethnicity. If at a later stage there was a call to include ethnicity in the risk stratification, then that's a modification that we can do at a later stage. But as you can see, the tool is already, just going to stop sharing now. The tool is already a little bit complicated with a lot of different options, and I'd rather people got to grips with kind of what's there, and then we can see what, if anything, there is to add at a later stage. But certainly ethnicity is in the patient view.
Okay, so there's a question of system 1, is the CKD template up to date? We keep our templates up to date, but I'm not aware of when that one was last updated. So we'll get back to you. But as far as I know, we keep them up to date. So with the previous trigger tool, we had to submit quarterly findings. How often do we run this one?
Okay, so I think the previous trigger tool was only in use in 1 or possibly 2 CCGs, and the problem with it was that it only displayed current, very recent values and none of the historical data. And it was quite difficult for practices because they had to, they were required to run it quarterly. This tool can be run quarterly if you want to run it quarterly, but it can be run however frequently you want it to. So it's it's a sort of a more flexible tool and giving more information. The previous tool that was used in particularly Town Hamlets was just showing a fall in EGFR. Whereas you can see from this tool, it gives you far more information. It gives you a fall in EGFR, but it also shows you not just a fall in EGFR recently, but a fall in EGFR from, and historical value within the last 2 years. So when it's looking at falls in EGFR, it doesn't look at a fall from ever recorded. It looks at a fall from the highest recorded value within 2 years. And if you've had a second one, whether there's been a fall or not, and that's what's being displayed. And when the tool lists that filtered list, it puts the highest fall at the top, and then ranks them down, everybody down below that. So that patient 15, I think, had a fall of 25 or something, so they were at the top of that list. That was the reason they were at the top of that list, because they'd had the biggest fall in EGFR. So we've tried to combine both the idea of the original trigger tool that was used in Town Hamlets, but with a slightly more updated version, including a lot more information, and that's what that does.
Right. So there are additional questions on the quarterly submissions. One is for the ICB, and the main gist of the question is, can it be filtered to only show patients who had an eGFR done in the last quarter? I think you've answered that to some extent, but I guess if you're running the tool quarterly, then that should do the trick. Or not?
Yeah, well, the tool can be run quarterly, but it will show you anybody who's had a test, in the most recent test within the last 2 years. So that's what it will show you. And so it doesn't show you a test done in a particular quarter. So I think that in a sense, the ICB is going to have to live with the revised way of doing this and be satisfied with that. I think all they're interested in for those practices doing quarterly tests is that you've done them quarterly. So it's just simply, showing them that you've got, you submitted that, you should be able to claim your payment. I mean, it should be sufficient, seems to me.
Right. I'm going to read another one, but quarterly. What are the expectations in terms of our quarterly submissions as per the enablers? The numbers were far more manageable in the previous version. Say on the demo tool, which picks 800, are we meant to get through 200 per quarter? I think this is.
I think this is where you get into sort of fairly careful filtering. So there are those practices in Town Hamlets who were using, had a particular local incentive scheme. And part of the problem is that, everybody in the ICB, each locality, each CCG had a different scheme, which is an absolute nightmare for anybody trying to sort of run programs. And I hope over time that there'll be more cohesion within the ICB to have a set of core measures, and there will be attempts to do that over the next few years. I agree with you that there's no way that 800 patients can be sorted in any small time, and that one will want to bring that number down. So you would need to decide as a practice who you're going to prioritize. Now, it may be that in Town Hamlets, if this scheme is going to continue, that they're going to go on submitting a quarterly report of people who've had a fall in eGFR of more than 10 or more than 15 or whatever the figure is. But it may be in another area that you think, well, the falls are important, but I'm really bothered about anybody who's got coded CKD and who has a blood pressure of more than 160. And I'm going to prioritize those people. And I showed you that there were 22 people, which is a manageable number in that. So, it's about prioritizing what you're finding. There are 3 things to prioritize, aren't there? One is uncoded CKD and making sure that they're properly sorted out. The second thing is people who've got critical falls in CKD, and that's kind of addressed by filters that show you people who've fallen more than 10 or more than 15. And lastly, there are people who are not meeting, blood pressure targets in particular, or are not on a statin. Those 2 things are the low-hanging fruit, so that you can quickly identify those in them. So I think it's about deciding what it is that you want to prioritize in your practice, and the tool will, it's fairly flexible in allowing you to do that.
Right. Just on that, a note from Keith Prescott, there is a dialogue between CEG and Town Hamlets Commissioning regarding enablers. So another question, I think this is the last question, do the results feed back automatically to EMIS, i.e. do they add the CKD code?
That would be wonderful, Isabel. I would completely agree with you. Unfortunately not. I mean, and I would worry about automating coding as well. So I think that there needs to be a thorough review of the actual record, because as I say, not all the information in the tool is not all the information in the record is summarized in the tool, and it may be that there's all sorts of stuff hidden away in letters or correspondence or whatever. So our experience has been in any kind of sorting of any register. There's clearing out the dross, that is people who really don't have CKD, that for some reason there's been some error made or it was a one-off reading. So getting that clear, and then for those that really do are thought to have CKD, to check that what it is, and then to add the appropriate code. And as I say, this has got somewhat more complicated in the last kind of year or so, because they don't only require you to put CKD3, say, in, but they want to know it's CKD3A2, indicating, you know, moderate and so on. So we will provide that information in the templates as to you know, how you do that. But I would be a little bit reluctant, I think, to automate you know, disease coding because of those reasons, Isabel, that you really need, you know, a more thorough review of the record in order to do that and then add it.
Okay, that's the last question. Has anybody got any other additional questions? Okay, I think we'll be sending the tool full links, etc. In the next one of the next bulletins.
I think, Lewis,
so look out for that.
Yeah, the other thing to say, Lewis, is that, and I think in relation to the many important points that people have been saying, it is that, you know, I think it will depend very much on your user experience of this. And it may be that everybody says, look, there's some filter that we're all using, you know, could you just make that a little bit simpler so we can, you know, do that? Or there's something, you know, we've got some ICB target that, you know, you're not showing easily. So I think that we do have an opportunity after a while to tweak this tool, and we'd be happy to, you know, look at it. But I do think it needs all of you to kind of use it to then feedback on how utilitarian or not it is. I think there's a hand up there. Is that right, Lewis?
Yeah, it's me. Sorry, it's me. Sorry. Again, I'm quite excited about this because I mean, this is a nut that I've been trying to crack for the last 3 or 4 years, at least. And I don't mind if it's oversensitive. At least if it is oversensitive, it will pick up. It will pick up the real clangers, the low-hanging fruit, as you described them, to address first. The other issue is that I'm hoping to do this as a big QI project at PCN level, which will hopefully be a big hit in terms of sorting out a population on this basis. So thank you very much for this. I will give it a spin. The only clanger, the only fly in the ointment is that I'm in a System 1 practice. Okay, yahoo. So this is why I was asking about whether the templates were up to date, so I can get cracking.
I think they are, Shahid. I will double check on that. And as I say, we are working on just updating them to have all this more complicated, you know, G3A2 codes available for people in the template so they can see what they are and then add them. But you know, I think it's people like you who are engaged users who will be very key to feeding back to us anything that isn't working or could be better and so on. So you know, really wishing you all the best with that program, but good to hear back from you. And do let us know, you know, about anything that isn't working out
beautifully with the 4 months to save your kidneys thing
right.
that the renal physicians are going on and on about at the moment.
Yeah.
But thank you for the session today as well.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye now.
Brilliant. Really good.